We'll get through this together. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. When you're going through a storm, when you're going through a life crisis, first of all, I want to tell you, we are having pollen season here, and there's so much pollen right now. And my truck is covered in pollen, and I hose it off every day, and more pollen. So we have pollen for about 2 or 3 weeks. So when you're going through a crisis, crises no one wants to go through because, well, they're very difficult and very challenging. And often with a crisis, there's uncertainty, and that can make a crisis even more difficult because you don't know how things are going to look after the crisis is over. Or is the crisis going to be over? Is it going to continue on? Most crises have a beginning and an ending. It's going through that crisis that can make it the most challenging and most difficult. So nonetheless, when you're going through a crisis, we'll get through this together. As y'all know, my daddy used to always say, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to work out. It's all going to be all right. My mama used to say, we'll get through this together. Well, I love my mama saying, I love my daddy saying, we'll get through this together. So recently, I have several friends going through a major crisis. And one of my friends just got a diagnosis that they have 3 to 6 months to live. And that is a crisis of epic proportion. And one thing, I encourage them to be the best. Now we have the postman in the back. And I encourage them to be the best and to make all right decisions, and hopefully that diagnosis will be wrong. And yet, I understand that they have to also, at the same time, understand that it could be correct. And so they know that I'm there for them. We'll get through this together, no matter how it turns out. We'll get through this together. I have another friend who had a brain aneurysm surgery, and they cut her from one side of her skull to the other. She has such a wonderful attitude, and she has people around her that love her and support her. We'll get through this together. I have another friend who is going through a marriage mess. It's a big mess. And I let her know that I'm there for her, that she's going to get through this uncertainty, unpredictability, the things that are going on. When my daughter took suddenly sick about 8 years ago, and if many of you don't know that story, I've done videos on it. And it was related to a birth defect that we never knew that she had. And it just suddenly came on her. And the doctors kept saying it was the flu. And I said, this is no flu. And I kept taking her back and taking her back. And then it was discovered that she needed to have life-saving surgery. And it was very touch and go. And fortunately, I was the kind of mother that I was, and that I was making sure that I just kept taking her back until they could figure it out. And had I not been that way, she would not be here today. And so I'm grateful that I, refused to accept the wrong diagnosis of the flu when it wasn't the flu. And so today, she's doing wonderful. She's doing great 8 years later. But during that time, we were in this huge storm. And I remember making my little videos and posting them to social media. And standing in the parking lot, I would stay at the hospital for days at a time, and then my husband and I would switch off so I could come home and take a good shower and, get new clothes and all that, and then I'd go back up. And I remember standing in the parking lot making a video the night before her surgery, and how scared I was, because we didn't know how things were going to turn out, if she was going to make it. And yet, we got through this together. We got through this as a family. So if you have family, if you have friends, or if you have one friend, or even if you only have you, we'll get through this together. Remind yourself, no matter what you're going through, a financial crisis. Back in the Great Depression, people, when the stock market collapsed, many people jumped out of windows. And other people went through the storm. They lost everything, but they went through the storm anyhow. And a new normal became new normal for them after they got through that storm. And they had to rebuild a brand new life. And so jumping out of a window is not a good idea. Some storms you just have to go through. Sometimes, you go into the storm and you don't know how long it's going to last or if it's going to last forever. And sometimes you just have to adapt to a new normal. I have a friend who, when he was a teenager, he got into an automobile accident at no fault of his own. And he ended up being in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And he went on to have a happy life. He got married. And yet his life was a new normal. And in one sense, it never returned to the way it was. It was a brand new normal, and he had to adapt. And he did. And he made the best that he could of his life and his circumstances so that he could be happy. And he found happiness in his life. And yet he had to adjust to a new normal. Things can happen in life, and we don't always know how they're going to turn out. And yet we have to believe that we're going to make the very best of any situation that we're given, whether it's during the storm or after the storm is over. That we're going to make the best of life that we can, and that we will get through it together, and that it's all going to work out. We've got to keep that belief. Even with my friend who has 3 months to live, I said, we'll get through this together, and let's believe in the best. We'll prepare for the worst, but we're going to believe the best, that you're going to be well. Just like with my husband, he had terminal cancer, the end-stage cancer. And he's a walking miracle today. He's 100% cancer-free and has been for 3 years. We don't take that for granted. We understand. And yet we look at it as a miracle in however it came. So when you're going through a storm, understand most storms don't last forever. But often on the other side of the storm, it's sort of like being in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy's house got picked up and thrown around and around and around and landed in the land of Oz, the Munchkin land. Everything looked totally different. And then at some point, she returned to her old home. And even that was somewhat different. She had a different perspective, a different view of life, and she was so grateful. So whether you end up in the land of Oz, or you end up someplace completely new, or you go back to the way things were, just remember, you'll get through it. You'll get through it. Hold on. Believe that you'll get through it, no matter how big that storm is. The scary part sometimes is in the beginning, when you see the storm coming. Once you're in the storm, you're in the storm. You're just trying to make every best decision, right decision that you can to get through that storm to the best of your ability. You don't know how things are going to look on the other side of the storm, but you know that regardless, you're going to make the best of life under any set of circumstances. Okay? From my house to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and I hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.